Welcome to the Secret Sauce of Selling podcast, the ultimate guide and sales gym to unlocking the secrets of successful selling. I'm your host, James Abraham, and on my mission to empower the best generation of sales professionals and business leaders the world has ever seen. I'm super excited to be here with you today to share insights, tactics and strategies, behaviors, attitudes, and techniques to take your sales performance to the next level with my very good friend and colleague, Andrew Wall from Canada. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, James.
And Andy, we're talking about, I think, an important topic for everybody, but very close to our hearts, sales process. Why don't we start to unpack that and tell us what are we talking about?
Well, certainly the Sandler selling system is the world's best selling system. We're highly biased, but that's what we believe. And in conjunction with the selling system is each company's unique number of interactions from hello to qualified to winning an opportunity or closing the file, whatever will happen. And that sales process I have found is unique to each company, and it's defining it, creating best practices, overlaying the Sandler selling system on it so that the entire company or you or I can have as much success with sales opportunities as possible.
Absolutely. And so let's break that down into pieces. And maybe what we want to do is just take an angle from a sales professional's perspective. Because I think the biggest challenge companies and individuals have today is that sometimes a company will have an idea of what a sales process looks like, and a salesperson will have his own idea of what a sales process would look like. And everybody, yeah. And I think that gap is sometimes where things fall in between the cracks and things fall off the wagon. So what do you say we look at this at a sales process from the perspective of a sales professional, and then we'll look at that as a perspective from a company? Does that sound like a fun plan for this call?
That'll work.
Sounds good. So let's do it. Let's begin. I mean, tell us what do salespeople and sales professionals need to know about maintaining process, no matter what they do, no matter where they sell, no matter what company, no matter what product?
What I hear a lot, James, is somebody will say, I've got a meeting. They're excited. They're looking forward. They go into that meeting. They're upbeat, and they hope good things come from it. Well, there's a lack of process right there. So it starts with, what sort of pre-call preparation are you doing? Obviously LinkedIn is a powerful tool. Are you using it to find out all the different people that are involved in that company? Have you done any website research on the company? So that you can get a good idea before you've even gone into the meeting, who might possibly be involved in the decision-making process. And, at Sandler, we're big on using a pre-call sales plan, writing out what what are you hoping to accomplish in this meeting? What's the outcome you're looking for? How are you going to start that meeting with a good upfront contract? And what are some important questions that you want to ask before you even get in the meeting? And then setting your mindset for that appointment. These are all the activities that somebody should be doing before they even get in that meeting. And then it's asking yourself, do you need one call? Probably not. Two calls? Maybe. Three calls? Maybe. Some of our clients need 4 meetings with their prospects before they can find out whether that prospect's going to become a client or not. So when we think about process, it's defining what's worked well for your company or for yourself as a salesperson. And what I find is very frequently there's a lot of my clients that have either 2 or 3 meetings to get a yes or no. So it's defining that best practices approach there.
Yeah, absolutely. And also sharing it with the prospects, sharing it with the buyers, telling the buyers, look, this is how we do things around here. If we're talking for more than 3 meetings, something's a little off. Would you be okay for us sharing, raising a red flag if that's the case? Either something, really big is happening and you have a bigger problem that you might have bargained for, or we're completely off here, and would it be okay for us to align? Does that sound like a good idea?
That makes perfect sense. And, I talk about don't surprise a prospect. So always let them know what's going to happen. As an example, when you book the meeting, you should be saying to the prospect, Mrs. Prospect, when we get together, you're going to have a lot of questions for me. I'll be happy to answer them. And I might have more questions for you. But by the time we're done chatting, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either you or I might not see a fit. If that happens, that's okay. On the other hand, we might see that there is a good possibility of a fit here, in which case we'll need to take the last 5 minutes to decide what are the specific next steps. Mrs. Prospect, does that sound like a good game plan for when we get together? That's a great way to end the telephone conversation where you book the appointment and telling the prospect what to expect in that first meeting.
Yeah, I love that. Don't surprise a prospect. That should be a rule. It
surprise
should.
surprise people. They're gonna say no, they're gonna freeze. And
Yeah.
the worst thing for salespeople is a prospect that's indecisive. They don't know where to go. That stalls and lengthens your sales cycle.
Yeah. And if you think about it, like turning that round, salespeople don't like to be surprised either. Right? I mean, we probably do that, set
Yeah,
that strong upfront contract so that we don't get surprised.
absolutely. If hypothetically you have 3 meetings from hello to winning a new piece of business,
Yeah.
you know what your game plan is, but the prospect doesn't. So you need to share that with your prospect so they know what to expect and you know whether you're on track or not. One of my favorite expressions is good prospects answer your questions and bad prospects don't,
Mm. Yeah. Well, if they're listening, then they're no prospect.
right?
Yeah. That just got me thinking. I was talking to a client earlier today, and we was coaching, and we're doing some stuff, and a lot of times they say, James, but what if I ask them a question and they say no to me, and I know that they actually are, it is actually a yes. For example, sometimes if we ask them, are they struggling with something? And part of our process is to uncover their problems and their challenges. And sometimes they'll say, well, not really. And when in fact, for some, it is actually happening. Now we know these things happen and it's happened to us all. And breaking process into little pieces. A thought that kind of popped into that discussion earlier today was our process isn't only high level, it's also in the details. It's in the responses we get and our responses to those responses. It's the psychology. So I'd like to break that down and take that into the psychology, and how psychology kind of really fits into process and how that can supercharge our efforts and keep us safe. Because you mentioned that surprise piece, and I think it's all psychology when it comes to being surprised or not. What are your thoughts?
And at the end of the day, sales is people relating to people. So you need to understand, how do people perceive you? What's your preferred style and way of interacting? And as a sales professional, it's your job to try and anticipate what's your prospect's preferred way of interacting. At Sandler, we talk a lot about extended disc, extroverts, introverts, people oriented folks versus task oriented folks. And based on their preferred communication decision making style, we need to adjust our interactions with them so that they're comfortable. And if we don't do that, and if the prospect is uncomfortable, that's when I think they shut down. That's when they don't answer our, important questions. On the flip side, when we do a good job of relating to them in a manner that they're comfortable with, then they're going to answer our questions. And now we've got a good dialogue going back and forth. And for me, extended disc is an important part of the psychology of relating to people in a manner that they want to be related to.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I also find that people are pretty predictable. People tend to buy the same type of way. They tend to do the things. They're very predictable. And so, what is your take when it comes to really leveraging that level of predictability? If it's their disc styles or the way they communicate, and what should salespeople be doing at the early stages in order to leverage that knowledge? So, what are the signs? You mentioned extended disc, for example. Could you give our listeners and viewers a few ideas and examples of how they can start to pick up on a few nuances to help them really make their prospects feel more comfortable?
Absolutely. And, extended disc is a very powerful piece of social psychology. And DISC stands for people that are the dominant style, influencer style, steady relator style, and compliant. And they all have favorite questions. And you might be able to pick this up in a 5 to 10 minute telephone initial call where you've decided to book an appointment. So the dominant styles, they ask what questions? What's the result? What's the bottom line? What's in it for me? Influencers, they love people and they want to meet as many people on this planet as possible. So they ask who questions. If we work together, who on your team will I meet? Who have you worked with before? So they're asking questions around people. The steady relators. Steady relator, one of the things that they like to do is support others. So they want to know, if we work together, how will we work together? What information do I need to bring to the table? How can I be prepared for our meeting? So they'll ask a lot of how questions. And the compliant people, they're very inquisitive, and they're often asking why. Why do you think your approach is going to be better than what I'm doing today? Why should I actually make a change? And so when you start thinking about the listening aspect of a salesperson, and that's like super important, our listening skills need to be top notch. Start to listen for the questions that we get asked. And then some telltale signs. Extroverts are just talkers. They like to talk first. So when I get on a phone, if I notice that the other person is talking a lot, I know they're extroverted. As soon as I know they're extroverted, they're big picture people. Don't give them the details because you're going to derail it. Whereas introverts, they're the quiet listener type. And so if I notice I need to lower my voice, slow down my pace of speech, because I think on average, I'm a loud, fast talker for Canadians, then I know that if I have to lower my voice and slow down my speech, that this is a person that likes information and they're very thoughtful. So when I ask a question, I need to be ready for some silence because they're going to think of my question and they want to think of the answer before they share it. And the average salesperson is not very good at silence. So when you ask an introvert a question, be prepared for a little bit of awkward silence as they're thinking about what you just asked and preparing in their mind what they want to say before they actually say it.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. It's not only the process that we have to go through and drive our opportunity through, it's also understanding how we adapt. And we adapt based on the style of our buyers and the way they behave and their psychology in order for them to feel more comfortable in that process. So what you're saying is, James, if you tell someone there are 3 meetings to this opportunity, some of them will love that and some of them will hate that, right?
That's right. The dominant's like, can we get this done faster?
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about and moving into company and company process when it comes to sales. And you've got the individual, and I've worked with lots of companies where some were trained, some were not, some knew process, some didn't. And I've worked with individuals, and I still have lots of clients that have enrolled in my programs individually, and they work for companies. Some of them implement process, and some of them don't. So let's talk a little bit about process from a company perspective, and what are the components to that, and how does that translate to supporting the salespeople?
Well, James, as we work with companies, once they've been introduced to the Sandler selling system and they've been using it for a little while, say 4 or 5 months into our relationship, that's when we'll sit down and actually spend some individual time with the company. We'll bring together the salespeople and we'll get them to describe a successful interaction with a good ideal client. And when they describe for me either 2 or 3 meetings to get a yes or no, then that's their defined number of interactions. Now we need to overlay the Sandler selling system over those 2 interactions. And so, from a company perspective, what they're trying to do is create consistency on how salespeople will engage with prospects and opportunities. And from the person's perspective, they know what they're supposed to do before the first meeting, in the first meeting, post first meeting, prior to the second meeting, in that second meeting, what's the objective, and then afterwards. And from a company perspective, if you're the sales leader listening to us today, trying to coach salespeople to win more deals, that could be very difficult if everybody's got a different selling system, if everybody has a different number of steps in their sales process. And so we need to eliminate that huge variation and create some consistency for the company. And that makes the sales leader's job so much more reliable for the rest of the company. Because one of the toughest jobs that most sales leaders have is telling the rest of the company, this is what we anticipate future sales will be. Let's make sure operations and purchasing are ready for that amount of work to come.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just setting the rules, I think, right? I mean, the end of the day, it's just setting the baseline for the rules. That's the direction. This is what we need to do. These are the obstacles. Here's how we keep safe. You
And helping them, I call it talk tracks, creating talk tracks around how to uncover problems that prospects have. At Sandler, we call that pain.
Yeah.
And what I believe is we need to help a prospect uncover three or more pains or problems before they'll change what they're doing. For some of our clients, what that means is a prospect might just think the status quo is acceptable. So the prospect lost out to indecision. So we don't want that to happen.
Fair enough. Um, Andy, what do you like doing in your spare time? I know you're a keen golfer.
Absolutely. I'm fortunate. I played a really nice golf course called Whistlebear Golf and Country Club. I was there just yesterday, and after a great round of golf, it's absolutely wonderful to be able to sit down on. We have a huge outdoor patio, wonderful chef, and your favorite beverage with your friends.
That's awesome. How long have you been golfing, by the way?
Oh, now you're starting to age me here. So I guess I've been golfing at least 35 years, and I've been playing at Whistlebear Club, my home course, for 12 years now. It's a wonderful facility.
Do you remember the beginning?
Oh, do I ever? It was awful.
Yeah. I used to golf, and I used to talk a lot about how golf is parallel to getting into professional sales, where you have to learn how to do things in a certain way, and you kind of miss, and it looks ugly and all this other stuff until you do it over and over and over again. It's like the swing. How many times have you swing that club? Probably don't even remember. You don't even know. I mean, it's thousands, maybe tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times to get that perfect
Yeah,
swing.
absolutely. And myself, I love golf, but I'm not a professional golfer by any stretch of the imagination. But at our golf club, we have a number of golf pros, and so I've hired them numerous times. I think whether you're a sales professional or an avid golfer, if you just keep doing what you've always done, you're always going to get the same result. So if you want a better result, you better go to the experts. So for golf, you know, I go to my golf PGA professional and take lessons. They video you. Here's what you're doing. By the way, this isn't good. Then they show you what you should be doing, and then they video you with the improved swing so that later, when I'm at the practice range myself, I can review on my phone what's the proper way to do things and practice the right behaviors because just going out and playing ingrains either bad habits or good habits. And golf professionals or sales coaches like yourself or myself allow sales professionals to be at the top of their game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, Andy, it's time for me to ask you the question. What is your secret sauce for selling?
It's what we've been talking about. My secret sauce, and I love the Sandler network. There's close to 250 of us in 30 odd countries. We get together, three times a year globally, and I've learned from the professionals that have been super successful. First and foremost, define your sales process, and then what are the most effective ways to engage in specific conversations of an upfront contract, uncovering pain, how to learn a prospect's investment parameters, and no two people or companies make decisions the same way. So, how to engage in a good conversation about learning their decision making process. And so I've borrowed, I like to call it R&D, rip off and duplicate. Rip off and duplicate the good practices from our other successful Sandler people. And I've created some documents myself that help me to not memorize what's going to happen, because in a sales call, you can't memorize stuff, but it's a roadmap that helps me remind myself, uncover problems before you talk about investment, uncover problems in investment before you talk about decision making process. And as soon as I created that sales document, it helped me to be more effective in conversations, helping more prospects fix their problems, at the same time build my business. Just recently, I had a Sandler friend come and visit me for a day and a half where we went painstakingly through that process so they could learn what's helped me be successful. And I was really pleased. Yesterday, I got an email from them showing me how they've incorporated what we've been discussing. And he was telling me that he's already seeing a difference in his sales results.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, what would be the number one tip you would give a business owner that has said to himself, you know what, I need to start getting my process in place? What is the first thing, apart from calling a Santa trainer, of course, what is the first thing that he could do to take that first step to start to get things in place?
Well, I thought it was funny what you said there because I was about to say, well, they should be calling you for sure. Um, excuse me. I think one thing that business owners could do is go to their accounting department and ask them to print their customer list from most revenue down to the least revenue, and then find some customers in there that are your ideal client, types of clients that you'd like to have more of. And once you extract those companies, then investigate how did they become a client. Let's look at the process that the salesperson went through to convert them from a prospect into a client and see what they've been buying. What you want to do is replicate your success stories. We don't need to make stuff up in sales. We have lots of evidence all around us. And I think the accounting department is a good source of information because it's real life data of your clients, what they're buying, and the dollar amount and the frequency of purchases.
That's awesome. Well, that was exactly what I was hoping to hear. It's easy, it's actionable, it's accessible. Why would someone not do exactly that? Andy, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. Always great spending time. Just going to give a quick shout out to Novacy, our sponsors, for sponsoring us. And Novacy is the platform that measures verbal and nonverbal communication on video calls. So thanks to Novacy for sponsoring. And Andy, how can people reach out to you? How can they
I
find
be
you?
I can be found at Andrew Wall at Sandler.com or old fashioned way 905-691-4553. I operate out of the Toronto area of Canada.
Awesome. All right. Well, Andy, looking forward to meeting you again, seeing you again. And thank you so much for the knowledge. And to our listeners and viewers, whatever you do, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. No guts, no gain, good selling, have fun, and be the best version of yourself.
Thanks, James.